Is the stock market crashing and should you be worried? What's going on, guys? My name is Brandon, and in my opinion, the answer to those questions are no and no. I don't think that the stock market is crashing for a couple of reasons, which I'll talk about in a second, and more importantly, should you be worried? Absolutely not, man. Even in the case where the market were crashing, which is a possibility, that should not warrant you to, freak out and consider selling some of your investments. We should all know by now, guys, that trying to time the markets is very difficult. And as a long-term investor, a much better strategy is to stay invested, to be patient, and actually invite this volatility as a potential buying opportunity. We look back at history, and of course, some of the best buying opportunities where we're seeing the most value for these stocks are in the midst of a crash. So the potential of a crash happening is nothing to be worried about. And if you're new to investing, maybe you just started, maybe you've been investing for a couple years, you may be asking the question, well, what's with all this irregular volatility that we're seeing? I think that there's nothing irregular about it at all. In fact, what's irregular is the lack of volatility that we've been seeing over the past little while. The markets have been on cruise control with pretty much no volatility whatsoever. We look here at the VIX, which is the volatility index, and really it only started to spike back at the beginning of the year. And basically what's going on, guys, is you got all this news going around, the tariffs, the trade wars, all this drama going around, which is essentially giving investors, it's giving the market, and in my opinion, an overheated market, a reason to sell off. And these pullbacks and corrections that we're seeing are not only normal, but they're healthy, and in my opinion, a little bit overdue. And naturally what happens, guys, is during times of uncertainty like this, it's the stocks that have been high flyers, the stocks that have been performing very well, that will naturally get hit first. We look at the tech stocks, for example. I mean, we can hone in on Netflix, which is down, I believe, 8% over the past week. Let's not forget that this stock was up 98% over the past year, and it was only a couple months ago that investors were pouring money into this stock because that's where the returns were. It was only a matter of time before we were going to start seeing an increased level of volatility, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the markets are crashing. It may not be what you're used to, especially if you're a new investor, but I do think that this is more or less just an increase in volatility rather than a market crash for a couple of reasons. For one, we look at some of the earnings reports that are coming out, and they're still very strong. The companies are reporting relatively strong numbers. The economy, I mean, we look at the US economy, for example, the unemployment rate still very low, 4.1%. A lot of productivity coming out of the US, a lot of spending, and the US economy is actually trucking along at a really solid pace, not to mention with the tax reform. A lot of these companies are benefiting from lower tax rates. A lot of them are repatriating a lot of cash, a lot of money overseas. To me, it's looking like the companies are in really good shape. Now, when there's a lot of spending in the economy, it's starting to heat up. There's always the threat for inflation, right? The cost of goods are rising. We have the Fed planning to raise rates, I believe 4 times throughout the remainder of the year. But one of the key reasons to look at here as to why I say that I think that this market isn't crashing is the flattening of the yield curve. So we can have a look here, guys, back at the 2000s. You see the yield curve represented on the left, and as we can see, it starts to flatten out and then it inverts right before the crash. Again, leading up to the crash of 2008, guys, we see the yield curve slowly starting to flatten out before inverting right before the crash. Now, skip ahead to where we stand today. We are clearly seeing a flattening, but we're not quite there yet. So I do think that we are heading closer to a crash, but I think that we're still a little while away. The economy is strong, these companies are still performing very well, and I think there's still time for the Fed to raise its rates throughout the remainder of the year before we see anything major happening. Sorry, the sun's just bugging in my eyes. That being said, guys, I'm not aggressively buying on these dips, okay? I'm not going all out and buying. I'm content with kind of sitting back, letting things play out. But one thing that I'm absolutely not doing is selling my investments. So I'll take this as a moment to preach, guys, the importance of being invested, and staying in the market, being patient, and the importance of having a strong asset allocation. If your portfolio is structured properly, you're investing in good companies that you have faith in the long term, you guys shouldn't be worried at all. So guys, that's it for the video today. Just wanted to give my thoughts on my updates on what's going on, because I'm seeing a lot of people freaking out over Reddit, over Facebook, and freaking out over the internet. There's no need to freak out, man. So thank you guys for watching the video. If it's your first time watching, definitely consider subscribing, and if you're already subscribed, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.